the morning after Election Day and Election Night in America. We're coming to you live from the US Capitol Hill, where the US Congress will now be shaded completely in red. A Republican is going to be the next president of the White House. The Republicans have taken control of the US Senate, and they are within striking distance of taking control of the House of Representatives, which means once that happens, the Republicans will have control of all three branches of government here in the United States, and that is a huge thing. The last time that happened was in 2016 when Trump won all three branches of government. He pipped Hillary Clinton, but like I said a moment ago, today's victory is bigger than what Trump achieved back in 2016. It is bigger, even in terms of electoral college votes, bigger than what Biden achieved 4 years ago. So how did this come about? We will get into the nitty-gritties. We will dive into the numbers. Like I said, Trump is on course to win all 7 of the swing states. Trump is winning the popular vote, and by a margin. He is right now, last I checked, is at over 71 million votes across the United States, and Kamala Harris is at over 66 million votes. No one said that Trump would win the popular vote by this kind of a margin. This is way above the plus or minus 3 margin of error in the polls. This is closer to 5% of the entire electorate, and therefore this has been a sweeping victory for the Republicans and for Donald Trump. We will try and break it down for you as to how he won, and also take it forward, because he's got a lot of work to do, both domestically and internationally. What are his priorities going to be? We'll lay out the Trump agenda and the Trump vision for the first 100 days, or the first first year at least, because he has a lot of work to do both domestically and abroad. This is how it played out in what has turned out to be a tremendous night for Trump, the Republicans, and of course, a night of heartbreak for Kamala Harris and the Democrats.
America great again. Oh, and powerful mandate. Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. You have some great senators and some great new senators, and it also looks like we'll be keeping control of the House of Representatives. We are going to start by all putting America first. We have to put our country first for at least a period of time. We have to fix it, because together we can truly make America great again for all Americans. We made history for a reason tonight.
You know, Trump has been running on this campaign of making America great again for the last 8 years, and 70 million plus Americans have bought into that. They bought into it in 2016, they bought into it in 2020, and they've bought into it in 2024. But I think, frankly, what tilted the scales for Trump and this phenomenal, the stunning comeback that we're seeing, is the campaign line that he ran for the last few weeks, saying Trump will fix it. I think that resonated with a lot of voters. People were upset, they were angry about the economy, about cost of living, cost of groceries, cost of housing had gone up, and then of course a lot of Americans were upset about America's role in these 2 ongoing wars, and the fact that the Biden-Harris administration was doing nothing to stop these 2 wars. Trump simply said, I know the country is broken, I know the world is broken, I'm the man to fix it, Trump will fix it. And I think a lot of Americans have bought into that message, irrespective of whether they are white or African American or Hispanic or Asian American. They have voted as Americans first, and Trump has, and his message of Trump will fix it has resonated with Americans, irrespective of racial divides or even gender divides, which was of course talked up by the Democrats in a big way going into Election Day. Let me now bring in our guests. First part, we will try and analyze how this stunning Republican wave, how it was mastered by Trump and his team over the last few weeks and months. And then, of course, we will lay out the agenda forward, because I believe, is going to fundamentally restructure the American government, the American bureaucracy in ways that we haven't seen since God knows, FDR back in the 1930s. Tom Rose is a senior advisor to Mr. Donald Trump. He was also an advisor to the former Vice President Mike Pence. Puneet Ahluwalia, former Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor in Virginia. Ajay Bhutoria is Deputy National Finance Chair of the Democratic Party. Lisa Curtis, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, and of course now she is the head of the Indo-Pacific Security Center at the Center for New American Security. Tom Rose, good morning to you from Washington, D.C. Let me start with you. I remember interviewing you a couple of weeks ago, and you said you were very confident that Trump will win. His message was resonating with ordinary voters. What is your first reading of this wave, this red wave? Trump has won all 7, or at least is on the verge of winning all 7 of the battleground states. He's won the popular vote by over 5 percentage points. That is not something that the pollsters saw, or the pundits saw, or even the news media saw.
I think it's perhaps the most remarkable political story, certainly in American history. This man survived 2 impeachments, 91 indictments, 34 phony felony convictions, 2 assassination attempts, a lost presidential election, an FBI raid of his private home, media collusion to destroy or delegitimize him, the opposition in unison calling him the worst conceivable names, comparing him to history's most bloodthirsty, brutal dictators, and he comes out and he wins what could be 315 electoral votes out of the 538 total. I think what it says is that the American people have had enough with the elite institutions and elite voices that continually assume they know what's best for us. And I think the American people rejected that. This was a rainbow victory. President Trump won half of the Latino or Hispanic vote. Unheard of. George W. Bush in 2004 won 40%, and everyone thought that was the high watermark. He won almost 30% of black men. This was not a white rage vote. This was a multi-ethnic, multiracial landslide victory for a man who promises to fix America's great problems.
You know, I think that's a fascinating insight, Tom Rose. Let me get Lisa Curtis in on this. You were here, Lisa, a couple of days ago. We were speaking about it. I don't think anyone can say that this is the kind of white lash verdict which many said 2016 was. The forgotten America, or the left behinds, was sort of raging against the establishment. This is, I mean, like Tom Rose said, he has won more Hispanic Americans than any other Republican who ran for president. He's won more of the male African American vote than any one who ran for president, at least in the modern era, from the Republican side. And I was looking at this place. It's called Dearborn in Michigan. It has the highest proportion of Arab Americans in America, in any city. You know who won there? Donald Trump. What does that say to the Democrats' politics of appealing and pandering to just race and nothing else?
Well, I think it shows that President-elect Trump was able to connect with the voters, from all kinds of backgrounds, minority voters, as you point out. He held steady with the women vote. There was a lot of speculation. You remember just 2 days ago, Zakka, when we were speaking, there was, a lot of people talking about, women were breaking for Kamala. Well, I don't think these things happened in the end. I think he was able to convince voters on his policies on the economy, on immigration. Those were 2 major issues for voters. And also just that he would be able to fight for their interests, protect their interests. And so people basically just felt that he was going to be the leader who was going to look out for their own interests, look out for the American people. He showed himself to be a fighter. He ran a very hard and persistent campaign. As you mentioned, there were 2 assassination attempts against him. I think it was a remarkable moment when, he had part of his ear shot off. What did he do? He stood up, he pumped his fist, So not everybody is going to respond to an assassination attempt that way. And I think this showed the kind of leader he is, and that he really would fight for the American people. And I think that is what has won him so handily. He has won this handily. People didn't expect that. I myself, I say, I thought it would be a closer race. I thought the polls were more neck and neck. But I think he has shown that he's got a very strong mandate. It's a very clear vote for him and his leadership. And I think in the end of the day, people basically thought he would be the leader to fight harder for their own interest and to protect America and everything it stands for.
I think for me what was fascinating was he was able to appeal to Americans, despite or beyond their identities, whether it is by race or by gender. You look at a problem like illegal immigration. You could accuse Trump of simplifying it and making it sound inhumane and so on and so forth. But ultimately, there is a problem, and that problem needs to be fixed. Who does illegal immigration affect the most? It doesn't affect white Americans. It affects legal immigrants into this country. It affects the Hispanics and the African Americans and the Asian Americans disproportionately compared to how it affects white Americans. And he was able to convey this message to those communities that, look, this is not about immigration. This is about violent crime. And these are people who are coming to your neighborhoods, infesting your neighborhoods, making your life difficult. And a lot of people have bought into that message. You look at one of the counties which has the highest proportion of Puerto Rican Americans in Pennsylvania, and despite all the rhetoric and the comedian who made that joke about Puerto Ricans, you know who won that county? Donald Trump won that county. So Puneet Ahluwalia, what does that say? I think it's got to a stage where politicians, and this is not just here in America, it's across the world, it's in India, it's in other democracies. You cannot just be playing identity politics. You have to, at the end of the day, if you are the incumbent, run on your record and show why your record is better than your opponents. And if you're the anti-incumbent, then say what you're going to do better than the incumbent to make the lives of ordinary people better. And not just say, oh, you're African American, therefore you have to vote Democrat. How can you dare think of voting for Trump? You're Hispanic. Look at all the stuff that Trump and his supporters are saying about Hispanics. How can you dare vote for Trump? That politics of just pandering to a narrow racial identity is not working. It's not working anymore. Puneet Ahluwalia.
Well, victory and vindication is the headline for President Trump and for the Republicans who have stood by him since 2016, or time he started. But more importantly, the message is that the Democratic Party or the liberal leftist media and social elites want to have a view of America according to them. And this is a clear message for them. Look at, we as Republicans, we went through a process where we elected President Trump to be the next leader of the Republican Party. And what happened on the Democratic side is she was anointed as soon as they found out that Biden was incapable to lead the country or be the head of the leader of the Democratic Party. And then what she said, she had no message. She had no message. And we as Americans have been suffering for the last 4 years after they inherited a very successful economy, a safer world than before. And that rhetoric of imposing on American people that he's a fascist, he's a racist, didn't sit well with people. And now guess what? They have lost handily, and it's complete sweep. So what it says is that identity politics is not here to stay. And all Arab Americans, all Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, what is one thing very common in them? They're all American. They're all impacted and affected by failed policies of the Democratic Party. The wokeism has to stop. The rule of law has to prevail. Weaponizing of the DOJ has to stop. This country has to come together, and we have to lead not just only for the American people, but for the entire world. Look at the bad actors in Europe. We have Putin, and we have North Korea and Iran. We need to find a way to resolve these issues. And President Trump was so good in this as he started the Abraham Accord. I think we'll find peace there. We'll find a way to get the NATO to be stronger, but the NATO partners have to contribute more. And at the same time, China, that's the biggest I would say, the gorilla in the room that we need to take on and find a way to neutralize that and do business with them. And I believe President Trump is the right leader
Okay,
at the right time for our
I'll get to
nation.
the forward agenda in just one second.
Sure.
I want to get to Ajay Bhattacharya for the Democrats. I think one of the points that Puneet Ahluwalia made, I think the fact that the Democrats took too long to figure out that Joe Biden was not in a position to run again. His mental acuities was simply not there. Kamala Harris just had 107 days to make the case to the American people that she was the alternative, and clearly not many Americans have bought into that. In fact, if you look at the popular vote, if you look at the raw data, she has about 66 million votes, which is less, way less than what Biden got. Biden got 81 million in the 2020 elections. So there are about 14, 15 million Americans who've either not turned up or who voted for somebody else, but they certainly have not voted for Kamala Harris. In fact, her popular vote is even less than what Hillary Clinton got. Hillary Clinton got 73 million, I think, in 2016. So it's about 5-6 million short of what Hillary Clinton got 8 years ago. So either the candidate was unpopular, and that point that Puneet made, I think, is absolutely validly taken. And please address that, Mr. Bhattacharya. You cannot impose a candidate on the American people. He or she has to come through the primary process. And unfortunately, in your party, Kamala Harris did not come through that primary process. The last time she went through that primary process, she was eliminated even before, I think, the first primary ever happened.
Well, first of all, congratulations to President-elect Trump. And as one of the speakers said, I do admire all his strength, going through so much, and is still standing strong to fight for American people. And as the Puneet pointed out, or you pointed out, Kamala had 117 days and to bring the case to who she is and what she stands for to the American people. And I think she did a fairly good job in getting her message across. The American people have made it very clear choice that they want Trump to handle the economy, the immigration issues, the wars, and everything, and to make the country more safe. So that's a choice American people have made, and we go with that. Now, the transition from President Biden to Kamala, I do agree that a lot of people within the party and a lot of people, outside, they did not like the way the transition was done. I was knocking doors in the Wayne County in Pennsylvania, and we were talking about the undecided voters to say, hey, you should be voting for Kamala. And one of the folk asked me that you guys are talking about saving democracy, and but you did not elect your candidate democratically. So how are you going to protect democracy? I said, yeah, that's a great question. Point. So that's a question with many voters.
That's an absolutely great point.
Yeah, many undecided voters had, and I think that played out in favor of Trump.
I think that's a fantastic point, and I think that resonated with the undecideds. That's a great point that Mr. Bhattacharya has made. Let me go back to Tom Rosen to try and take this forward. What is Trump's agenda going to be? First, domestically, and then I'll ask Lisa about the international agenda. But domestically, Trump has basically, and he said this over and over again in his campaign, he is going to fundamentally restructure the American bureaucracy, which means RFK Jr. becomes health secretary, Elon Musk becomes the secretary for the Department of Controlling Government Expenditure, what have you. And now he has the mandate. He's got a sweeping mandate, the biggest that a Republican has had, I think, since George W. Bush, if not Ronald Reagan. And more importantly, he has control of the Senate. So he can get anyone appointed as secretary or ambassador in the next 2 years till they have control of the Senate. So how may you think Trump is going to restructure the American government, the American bureaucracy in particular?
Well, I think Zakka been very clear about what he wants to do. We need a closed border. We need a fixed immigration system. We need mass deportation of illegal criminals in the United States, of whom there are hundreds of thousands. He now has the ability to begin to do that. But let's not forget, Zakka, that the administrative state, the bureaucracy, if you will, the civil service, is still in place. the legal system is still in place. The Democrats, the left, are not going to roll over and die. They'll file lawsuit after lawsuit or injunction after injunction. They'll get their judges to try and stop. And that's the way our democracy works. I'm not necessarily complaining about that. We have a system of checks and balances designed to ensure that not one single branch of government is supreme or has more power than the others. But on the judicial side, we now have 3 members of the Supreme Court who are over 70 years old. 2 of those are conservative, 1 is liberal. We might see some retirements on the court now that we're assured that they can be replaced by conservative judges. So as significant and as important as this election is, our American system of government is designed to slow things down. It's built with sand in the gears, if you will, to ensure that there can't be a dramatic, radical change without popular mandates. Now, Trump has a significant popular mandate. He's been very clear about what he wants to do. His main objectives he'll be able to accomplish, but some of the broader thematic themes, I think we're still going to have to wait and see.
All right, let me also go across to CNN reporter Ivan Rodriguez, who's joining us from West Palm Beach, Florida. He's, of course, been keeping an eye out on the Trump campaign. Trump came out and spoke last night to his supporters. Massive, massive win. I know that CNN has still not projected Michigan, Arizona, or Nevada yet, but Trump is leading in all 3 states. And if he were to win all 3, this would be a bigger mandate for him than what he won in 2016. He's effectively going to win all 7 battleground states. How did this come about, Ivan? What's the read in Trump HQ on how this landslide was brought about?
Well, Zakka, I'd even say that in the Trump camp, they'd argue even without winning Arizona and Nevada, it's a landslide victory. Because it really has been surprising to see, even earlier last night, how much of a lead he was gaining in those key battleground states. I will tell you, though, that what we're hearing from a lot of voters in states across the country, let's even just focus on those battlegrounds, which had a lot to say in terms of who was going back to that White House. The economy was the number one issue. And we're looking at things like inflation, grocery prices, gas prices, housing market. A lot of things in that sector have been worrisome to the American population, to the greater population. And although inflation isn't necessarily rising anymore, it also hasn't gone any lower per se. So prices have remained pretty much high at that point. So every time someone goes back to the grocery store, they're still looking at those high prices. Trump and his campaign did a good job of being able to tie Harris to that Biden presidency and remind people in a way that she is no different than Biden. If you vote for her, you're going to get the same thing that you got from President Biden. But it really is so overwhelming. And we look across the electoral map, right? That blue wall, what Democrats say is so important to them. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Trump flipping Pennsylvania, Trump also flipping Wisconsin. We were talking yesterday, even if he was just able to get one of those, it was going to be crucial to his White House victory. But now, looking at the map, he could walk away, as you mentioned, with Michigan as well, would mean a complete overhaul of that blue wall, which Biden was able to flip it back in 2020. But states like Georgia, they were gone Republican again. North Carolina, which Democrats were eager to possibly flip, that remained under that GOP win. Arizona, Nevada, I mean, at this point, like you mentioned, it doesn't really matter what happens in those states. But if they do go Trump's way, it's just even more of a sense of just how much of an overwhelming victory it was, not only in the Electoral College, but also winning the popular vote.
Yeah, I think last I checked, like I said, Trump had 71 million, Kamala Harris had about 66 million, Biden had 81 million, so that's about 13, 14 million less who have voted for the Democrats. why they didn't do that, I guess pundits will sort of scratch their heads and do their analysis about that. But I'm coming to you, Ivan, from the U.S. Congress, from the U.S. Capitol Hill. And this is going to be a different government now, because you have a Republican in the White House, you have Republicans in control of the Senate, and they are within striking distance of taking or winning the House of Representatives. What does that mean for Trump and his second term, both in terms of appointments and also his agenda?
I mean, look, yesterday we saw Trump very excited for the fact that the GOP was able to secure control of the Senate. You can only imagine he is very closely watching those key races in the House, because if he is able to secure the House, I mean, it really opens up the door for his new government now to do a lot of the things that he had said along the campaign trail that he had wanted to do. A lot of these things do require congressional approval, although a lot of things have been said along the campaign trail, right? For example, tax on tips to help other sort of policies. A lot of them, Zakka, require that help from Congress.
All right, Ivan, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Ivan Rodriguez at West Palm Beach, Florida, tracking the Trump campaign. And of course, there was a big party there after yesterday's speech. Trump gave a big speech and he said that the country is broken and we need to fix it. We need to put America first. That's been his messaging. That's been his messaging for the last 8 years. But let me go to Lisa Curtis and take this forward. Now, obviously, there's a big domestic agenda, but there's also a big foreign policy agenda for Donald Trump. There are two wars. He has been an anti-war candidate all along, right from the first time he ran in 2016. He might respond differently to the two wars. On Russia-Ukraine, he has said publicly he will end it within 24 hours. He will basically tell Zelensky, take it or leave it. What does that mean? And two, also on the Israel-Hamas question. Now that, I just gave you the example of Dearborn, Michigan, where Arab Americans have voted overwhelmingly for Trump. How does he play the Israel-Hamas war? Does he give Netanyahu more of a blank check, or does he tell him, okay, go ahead, finish the job, but also end this war quickly?
Well, these are all great questions. I can give just a few thoughts. First, on the Ukraine-Russia war. Certainly, he has said he wants to focus on negotiations, focus on ending the war. But the question is, how do we do that? And how do you do that in a way that you're not empowering Russia to try the same thing a few years later? Of course, Trump doesn't want to look like he's giving in to Putin. The American people certainly would not support that kind of solution. So I think it's going to take time. And the question is, how do you end the war in a way that you're not rewarding Russia and that you're not encouraging Russia to try the same kind of illegal, unjustified invasion of another country 1-2 years down the line? So I think that's a critical issue. The second, on Middle East, the Trump administration was a huge supporter of Israel. They will continue to support Israel in its fight. And I think that, we have to look at the fact that Netanyahu also understands that Trump does not like to see conflicts prolong, would not want to see the U.S. get embroiled in the conflict. So I think, again, I think Trump will be able to help the situation and perhaps get to a position where there could be some kind of ceasefire or winding down of this conflict as well. And then lastly, let me just say a few words about China. Trump had really set the policy toward China during his first term. He had been very clear about restricting certain technologies to China. He had put in export controls. He had taken a very firm position on China's aggressive behavior toward other countries, India being one of them, of course, into the 2020 Gawan crisis. So I would expect that he would continue with this strategy, working with allies and partners in order to meet the China challenge and more effectively compete. This is the name of the game now. The U.S. is in competition with China.
All right, Lisa, Tom Rose, and Puneet, thank you very much for joining us. I want to shift focus to the second part of our program, and that is on the US-India bilateral relationship. And somebody who's seen that from very close quarters is Mr. Syed Akbaruddin, former Secretary to the Ministry of External Affairs, former spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs. Good morning to you from Washington, D.C., Mr. Akbaruddin. I'm coming to you live from outside the US Congress. It is a new dawn in America. It's a Republican wave. Trump is back in the White House. What does it mean for the India-US bilateral? Of course, I want to start off with the whole trade question because Trump, at least on the campaign, has said that he's going to impose a 20% straight-up tariff on all imports into the United States, and that includes imports from India. What may that mean?
So, Zakka, first of all, changes in U.S. administration are not new to the Indian establishment. We've navigated these changes successfully previously. Now, on your specific issue of trade and tariff, yes, these are challenges that globally everybody has to navigate. And it's not that we haven't navigated trade-related challenges with the US before. For example, in the last Trump administration, he withdrew the GSP benefits for India. Yes, he's transactional. Yeah. But then big countries know how to work with each other, and a give and take relationship is what Trump understands. And countries like India and the Indian diplomatic establishment know how to engage in this dialogue. And I don't see this as a major threat. Of course, he intends to promote his interests on a basis which is not only antithetical to India alone. It is the intention that he wants to impose these sort of restrictions of 10 to 20% across the globe, with some exceptions where their interests don't coincide, like in China. In terms of India, US and India interests coincide. So there will be such pinpricks, but I don't see a divergence in the big interest between the two countries.
I do want to ask you about the China question because the feeling with the Biden-Harris administration, at least in South Bloc, was that they are distracted by what's going on in West Asia, the war there, the Russia-Ukraine war there. They were not as much focused on China, whereas with Trump, and he said this publicly so many times, both when he was president and also on the campaign, he's going to be squarely focused on what is the long-term challenge for the United States, which is the rise of China. Do you think that would be good for India? Because India also has its own set of challenges with China.
So, yes, to the credit of the first Trump administration, they pivoted in a manner which no other administration had done in addressing their long-term challenges from China. Now, India and US interests converge in this area for a variety of reasons, which are pretty obvious. And therefore, a convergence of interests helps in both the countries in working together. And yes, as you said, if other issues or the other two wars, the two major wars which are going on elsewhere in the world are addressed, the focus will turn to issues relating to the common challenges faced by both India and China and other countries, both India and the US and other countries from a variety of strategic impulses from China. Having said that, there is one other thing I think we also need to be cognizant of, and that is the Republican administration is less focused on values than on interests. And that's a good sign because interests are easy to focus on. Values will always differ from perspectives which are different in both societies.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially on this whole business about Khalistan and all these separatist elements. I think Trump won't be as uptight, if I can use that word, as the Democrat administration has been. But thank you very much, Mr. Akbaruddin, for joining us. I'm in fact going to go across to one of your counterparts on the other side. Ambassador Atul Kashyap is the president of the US-India Business Council. Ambassador Kashyap, I'm coming to you live from outside the US Congress, outside the Capitol Hill. It's a new morning in America. It's a red wave. Trump is back in the White House as president. The Republicans are in control of the Senate and will likely take the House as well. What's your read? What's your read of what went on last night, because nobody was predicting this kind of a landslide. I mean, the polls were saying that it was going to be extremely close. It boils down to the battlegrounds. I think he's winning all 7 battlegrounds. What exactly happened? What's your analysis?
Well, President Trump clearly ran on a campaign plank of keeping America strong and trying to address all of the wars and instability and ensuring the well-being of the American people. So he clearly enjoyed a groundswell of support. I think the great victory last night was not only President Trump's, but of American democracy. Look at the American people queuing up and patiently voting in a free and fair election, showing once again our passionate devotion to democracy. It's good for us. It's good for all free people around the world. So let's see what comes of it.
I do want to ask you about, what Trump's agenda, at least on the foreign policy front, would be. Obviously, he would be, his top 2 priorities would be the 2 wars, Israel-Hamas and, of course, Russia-Ukraine. On Russia-Ukraine, he has said publicly on the campaign that he's going to end it in day 1. He's going to end it in 24 hours. He's basically going to tell Zelensky, take it or leave it, and he's going to shut off the aid. His vice president, now vice president-elect, J.D. Vance, has said in as many words in the Senate floor and otherwise that Ukraine should not be given American aid. You reckon that is likely how Trump is going to play the Russia-Ukraine war?
Zakka, I want to talk to you about U.S.-India relations. I think that Trump, who wrote The Art of the Deal, clearly is invested in making deals. And I think that U.S. and India actually have an enormous opportunity to be ambitious. So whatever happens in Russia-Ukraine, let's focus on Delhi and Washington. Let's focus on taking the U.S.-India strategic, economic, and technological convergence to the next level. That's the critical work of the 2 great democracies of this planet.
The reason I asked you that is because it has a knock-on effect. I mean, I know one sore point between the Biden-Harris administration and New Delhi was on India's import of Russian oil. But be that as it may, let's talk about what Trump's economic agenda is and what his plan is. He's basically saying anywhere between 10 to 20% tariffs on all imports into the United States. And that will surely affect Indian imports into the United States as well, won't it?
Well, look, this is where President Trump has been very clear about the need for fair and balanced trade. There have been structural imbalances in America's trade with many countries around the world. Since the pandemic, we've also had rising concerns about supply chain vulnerability. This is where, again, if Delhi and Washington play it well, and if Delhi understands the sensitivities of the American people as telegraphed through this election, then I think there's an opportunity for both India and America to be entrepreneurial. Recall that in the last days of the Trump administration in Trump 1, there was a very intense effort to try to forge a meaningful trade deal. And I think that if both sides can get back to that, there is a chance for both Delhi and Washington to be ambitious, to achieve some big things for both Indian and American people, and to reinforce the connectivity between high trust nations such as India and the United States and strengthen our supply chains. But it does require that our partners understand the sensitivities and feelings of the American people.
I want to get one final word from Ambassador Kashyap. Mukesh Aghi is also joining us from the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum. But Ambassador Kashyap, just on that question, when Trump was president between 2016 and 2020, you know this. I mean, you had a ringside view of this, how he railed about, the Harley-Davidson tariffs that India was imposing, how he was upset about India buying S-400 missile defense systems from Russia. How do you see that sort of playing out? I mean, India's defense partnership, for example, even today, despite the war and all of that, almost 50% of India's defense imports are from Russia.
Well, I also remember, Zakka, that the president visited India to Ahmedabad for that big rally. He also hosted Prime Minister Modi in Houston, Texas, and so much else besides. And I vividly remember from my time in government that when India was facing the rather terrible challenge at Galwan and made some requests of the United States for help in critical areas, President Trump made a decision to rush that aid to India because of the strength of the relationship between the Indian and American people. So I think what will need to happen is clear conversations between Delhi and Washington in Trump 2. about the respective needs of one another, and then serious work to forge an ambitious agenda for continued strategic, economic, and technological convergence, because it's important for both of us, and it's frankly important for the stability and happiness of the world.
All right, Ambassador Kashyap, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. Let's see if US-India sees a new dawn under Trump 2.0. Mukesh Aghi from the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum is also now joining us. Thank you very much, Mr. Aghi. Good morning to you. I'm coming to you live from Washington, D.C., outside the US Congress, the Capitol Hill. Just tell us, I mean, your assessment, your hot take of what exactly happened last night. It's a massive landslide for Donald Trump and the Republican Party.
Well, you had a very effective campaign by the Republican Party. They were organized, their messaging was right, which resonated with the people. And you have for the first time in the last 20 years, popular vote also being won by the president, the Senate, and the White House, and we're waiting for the results on the House also. So I think it seems to be a clean sweep for the president on his agenda, and that's going to be disruptive on a global basis.
I do want to talk to you about one of the big issues that Trump made on the campaign was about illegal immigration. And when we were speaking to people, around the DC area over the last 2 or 3 days that we've been here, including people in the Indian American community, the Indian American community wants more legal immigration into the United States. And they were saying that the people who illegal immigration affects most are actually the legal immigrants. Do you see Trump, once he's done with this whole business of, mass deportations or whatever it is that he wants to do to address the illegal immigration problem, do you see him addressing the legal immigration issue as well? Because that system is also broken.
No, absolutely. I think you have to understand the crying need for the U.S. business community is skills and manpower, women power. And it's important to basically hire those people. And there's a massive shortage, especially in the tech world. And what we are seeing is the legal immigration is being impacted by the illegal. We have around 16 million illegal immigrants. And by the way, the third largest illegal immigrants are now coming from India itself. That has a percolating impact on the legal side. So
Correct.
I think it's important we address that, because if we don't address that, then the companies are not globally efficient, effective, and they need talent to be able to build business both domestically and globally.
So he's also saying, look, I mean, I know some of it could be campaign rhetoric. He might tone it down when he is actually governing, that this whole 10 to 20% tariffs on all imports into the U.S., if not, then you have to come and set up a plant here in the United States. Do you see this working? Because ultimately, if there's going to be tariffs, then, companies are going to pass that on to the consumers. It's not like they're doing this for charity.
Well, the economists have estimated that if you put 20% tariff, it has almost a 2% inflationary impact, and also have almost a dramatic impact on the GDP growth also, because at the end of the day, it's the consumer which pays for that. Last time when the tariff was set up, we didn't see a massive movement of companies moving manufacturing back to the U.S. You have to understand it's not all manufacturing will move back. Some will definitely move back. But overall, there's a massive skill shortage. What we will see is that China will get impacted the most, because the promise is to put 60% tariff on Chinese goods coming into the country. So a lot of U.S. companies who are concerned about their supply chain, concerned about their revenue and sales, will look at other alternatives beside China to set up manufacturing. Yes, high-end manufacturing may move back to the U.S., but the low-end manufacturing will stay in Asia and other part of the world, and India can play a very pivotal role. And it's not just about being part of the global supply chain. India also offered U.S. companies market opportunity. You look at Apple, which moved part of its manufacturing to India, and its domestic revenue has gone up over $5 billion itself. So I think it's a combination of global supply chain, de-risking manufacturing, and at the same time gaining market share.
And very quickly, Mr. Aghi, before we let you go, obviously the big foreign policy challenge, the most immediate priority for him would be to end the two wars. And Trump, to his credit, has been anti-war ever since he first ran as a candidate in 2016. How do you see him play both the Russia-Ukraine war and the Israel-Hamas war?
When you look at on the Ukraine and Russia front, they've made it very clear, the Republican Party, that they will not anymore supply all the weapons and money to Ukraine itself. And there has been some kind of a discussion with Putin. So I think you will see some kind of a settlement happening on that war. In the case of Middle East, I believe they will give a more free hand to Netanyahu to go basically deal with the proxies, which is the Hezbollah's, Houthis, and Hamas itself. But more important is the stress point with China. I think it's important to understand that both Republican and Democrats see China as a critical adversary, both from a military side, economic side, and technology side. And that's where India becomes critical in the strategy of leveraging India to deal with counter China itself. And you have to understand that one area which we will see more focus is going to take place is Quad, the four countries, which is Japan, Australia, India, and the US. And I believe the Quad will percolate into the economic agreement also, because there are four countries whose total GDP is around $35 trillion. They can work together as a potential common market, which will be an easier thing to do. And that's going to basically affect India dealing with the tariff of 20% also. So we believe that while the focus is going to be initially Middle East and Middle East and Ukraine, but the Quad will play a pivotal role also.
I think that's a great point, because when Trump was president between 16 and 20, he was the one who gave so much impetus to move Quad into a head of government sort of setting. Eventually, of course, the first head of state Quad meeting happened when Biden became president. But he did really push the Quad. So I think that's a great point made. Thank you very much, Mukesh Aghi, for joining us from the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum. It is a big moment in America's political journey, no doubt about it. Donald Trump has managed to do something that no American president has done in over 100 years. Grover Cleveland back in 1918, after he won a term, then lost re-election, came back after 4 years, and then won a second term. So for Trump, this is a bit of redemption, if you will. This is a shot at creating history again, making America great again, as he keeps saying. And I think the most important thing is Trump realizes that there is a broken system, whether it's on immigration, whether it's on economy, and he has made a promise to the American voters that he will fix it. So the next 4 years, we will wait and see whether or not he's able to live up to those high promises.